Recently, I've heard Bluey described by someone as someone having an emotional baseball bat waiting behind a door for you. And I've always wanted to make sure you come away from Bluey knowing as much as you can about all the different family members. And Chilli's mum was sort of the last piece of the puzzle. And there was just this idea that she was on her own. Mum wasn't around.
G'day, cheeky dogs. The UK has finally released the Bluey episode Dragon on Cbeebies. So to celebrate, this is a compilation video of not only the darkest timeline in Bluey about Grandma Cattle and when she might have passed away as a theory, but also all the amazing hidden details that all the animators put into this episode and the behind-the-scenes stuff that the creator Joe Brumm told us about this episode as well. I'll make sure I also put timestamps in the pinned comment down below so that way you can know where to go to look for the Easter eggs or for the theories. So with that being said, let's jump into it.
I kind of gave up drawing cars after that. Gave up drawing altogether, really.
That's sad.
And the very first one is the fact that this story, Dragon, is actually about Joe's dad and his granddad.
Chilli she was on her own. Mum wasn't around. And that was how my dad grew up, except it was his dad who died quite young. He did chart his own course with being a dad, I think because of that, because he didn't have an example there. And so to me, that's sort of what Chilli's character is. To a certain extent, she's charting her own course as a mum.
I'm his daughter. He should take care of himself for me because I still need him.
So as you heard, Joe Brumm, the creator of Bluey, wanted to create a story like this to show what it's like for when a parent doesn't have their parent there when they become a parent. And we've seen this time and time again with Chilli, especially in Baby Race, when she quite obviously didn't go to see her mum for help but saw Nana instead.
Let's stop mucking around, eh? A bit of olive oil on those knees will do the trick.
But how is olive oil going to help?
Oh, for goodness!
Mom, what are you doing?
And so I thought this was just a really great tie-in to find out then what actually did happen to her mum.
Your mum sounds nice. Yeah, she was.
So let's go into that then. The second thing we're going to talk about is Grandma Cattle, aka Chilli's mum.
I've always wanted to make sure you come away from Bluey knowing as much as you can about all the different family members. And Chilli's mum was sort of the last piece of the puzzle.
Keep practicing. You'll get better. Just don't ever give up, Chilli.
Who is voiced by Kate Miller-Heidke, who is an Australian actress, singer, songwriter. She was in Eurovision, but sadly, of course, we see only the flashback of her when Chilli was young, and we do get confirmation that yes, she has passed away and that Bluey has not met her.
Who is that?
That's my mum, your grandma.
Wow, she's beautiful.
You're not coming, are you?
Which then brings me into the next thing, and that is the saddled by grief reference. And this is quite on the nose. We see the horse that Chilli is riding throughout this episode, and it ends up being sort of like a replication of her feelings towards her mum. And more specifically, the fact that like she's really been struggling with the grief of losing her mother and how to heal from that. And the very end scene is just a tear jerker. Like I get sad even thinking about it. But it very much reflects the whole idea that Chilli has been saddled, literally, with this grief for a long time since she's lost her mum. And finally, she's able to unsaddle the grief, so literally unsaddling the horse and healing from her grief and being able to let her mum go and move on with her life, basically with her new family with Bluey, Bingo and Bandit. So a little on the nose with the saddled with grief and unsaddling the horse, but I do love that the saddle turns into the wings of the horse that allows it to fly away. The fourth thing that maybe you might not know about, of course, is the epic amount of TV references, and most specifically, of course, the Dungeons and Dragons reference.
It's D&D! A motorbike? I thought this was an old-timey elfie story.
All the characters mimic people from Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, it's on!
Chilli being the ranger.
Ranger?
Bandit being the barbarian.
Barbarian?
Bluey being the warlock.
Magician?
As well as sort of the game master, because she is telling the story for us.
Once upon a time, some friends all set off to find a dragon.
And then Bingo is kind of up in the air. She could be the artificer, she could be the bard. We're not really quite sure.
The dragon's cave!
And of course, from the Behind Bluey podcast in Australia, we learned that Joe Brum is a massive fan of Dungeons and Dragons and used to play it a lot as well.
From a similar age, I used to play those games with my brothers and my brothers' mates. And I was most often what we would call the game master, right? And there's something so satisfying about providing a really fun experience. And there's something so similar now to what I'm doing in my job. Yeah, you're getting paid for it this time, but you're trying to create a shared experience purely because that is a fun thing to do. So I desperately wanted to have some type of fantasy adventure in Bluey. And so this app kind of came about, those two things collided.
Wow, this dragon's hard to find. Let's ask the wise old talking tree.
Oh yeah!
I was very fortunate enough to be able to talk to one of the animators from Ludo Studios and ask them where the long dog was, because I knew it had to be in there, and they very graciously gave me a HD version where I could actually see the long dog, and it is hidden in the treasure chest in the cave, and you just see him as in like quick little scenes when you see that treasure chest.
Treasure! Yeah, boy!
Also, there was one small change in the US Disney Plus version. So the subtitles for the end scene when Bandit is like drawing his car and he adds on a bull bar.
Nice car, Dad!
Thanks! Just it's a bull bar!
The Disney Plus version has it as an oompha. The only reason I bring this up is because, of course, there are people who are hard of hearing or perhaps are deaf, and they use the subtitles to understand the episode. So these small changes, I always want to bring them up as well.
You wanna come with us to find the dragon?
Okay, but back to Dungeons and Dragons. So there is also another reference here from the Dungeons and Dragons video games, the Commodore 64 ones, and specifically the Dungeons and Dragons game Curse of Xanathon. So the camping scene here apparently is exactly the same color scheme and sort of scenario as what you can see in that video game as well. And I tried so hard to find this on the internet, but I could not. But we did find it out that this is exactly it from Behind Bluey podcast from Joe Brum himself. So let's now also talk about the character designs as well. So Bluey, of course, has the exact same design as we saw in the episode Escape, and Bingo's is a little bit similar, but kind of more a childish version of that, of course, to symbolize that she is a little bit younger than Bluey, so her drawing skills aren't quite as good as Bluey's yet. Bandit's design is, of course, based on the Barbarian, but specifically it looks a lot like Conan the Barbarian, the Arnold Schwarzenegger version with the same headpiece, and of course the furry jocks as well.
Man, these furry jocks are itchy.
But Joe Brum did also say that he was inspired by Gru the Barbarian as well. Now, Chilli's design, of course, is the most interesting. She has drawn herself younger, also with the exact same like hair tufts or hairstyle as her mum, and also is what Brandy currently has as well. Her art style, however, people thought might have been based on Studio Ghibli, but it's actually based on Beth Harvey's art style. So she's one of the animators of Bluey, and she worked on this episode as well, and you can see her art style all over Instagram, and they actually pulled her art style and used that to create Chilli's art style for this. And of course, all their different styles are also based on their confidence levels, their practice, and their persistence with drawing as well. So let's talk then about all the kind of art references and details as well in this, because there are so many. So when we see all of them around the table, they're all actually using completely different types of pen. So Chilli is using alcohol markers. We also see that she is ambidextrous as well. She's drawing with her left hand here, but in the flashback memory scene, she's drawing with her right hand. So again, it's kind of showing that her persistence and practice got to the point where she could use both hands for drawing. We also see in that memory flashback scene, her using the like old school 80s printing paper with the green lines and the little holes to mark on each side of the page as well. Again, just sort of putting it in that flashback scene that she is in the 80s, the same as Bandit in his flashback scene. So in Bandit, we see him write on the red and blue, like a lined paper that you'd use for like writing out your letters when you were a kid, as well as the old school 80s flip up desk. But Bandit as well, his pen that he's using during the drawing scene is just a plain black marker. And that's meant to symbolize kind of his lack of enthusiasm for drawing, his creativity. He is just black and white the whole time until the very end when he gains his confidence back because of seeing how confident Bluey has become, and he draws in color for the first time when he draws the car. Now, if we look at Bingo as well, with her being the youngest of them all, she is drawing with crayons, which of course is usually the first type of medium that kids start to draw with. And also you can see that her drawings are a little bit more scribbly, but one of the coolest little details is the pasta bow tie that she adds to her tree. So in the actual Bluey verse, it just looks like a regular bow tie, but of course, when we actually see it in the drawings, it is a real life 3D photorealistic bow tie pasta shape. And again, kind of like a weird fourth wall meta kind of break. story. Now, Bluey, of course, is using just sort of your general markers or textures, and she's drawing with a lot of color. And of course, we see her gain her confidence with her drawing throughout this episode. But it also kind of links back to the episode Perfect, when we also saw her kind of not very confident with her drawing skills and wanting them to be perfect. So I like that they're sort of continuing on with this sort of story from Bluey's perspective. Some other little art details is that you might not have noticed that the paper that they're drawing on when we're watching like the Dungeons and Dragons scenes unfolding, the background is all scrunched up like it's real paper. And then in the Dragon Cave scene as well, because it's meant to show that they're in like a really big space, it's all different pieces of paper all put together, which is just such a cool little extra detail. And a lot of people thought that the dragon might have been referencing cancer and of course how Chilli's mum might have passed, but Joe Brum did state that the dragon is meant to represent the difficulty with drawing and how it's like a big thing to try and overcome. So that's exactly what the dragon is supposed to reference.
Because I always love that phrase that the biggest dragons guard the biggest treasure. And it is this dragon you face when you're drawing of like, I'm not very good at this, or this thing doesn't look like this thing, but just pushing through it. It's not about the end goal of it.
Now, let's talk about all the TV and movie references in this. The first one, of course, I want to talk about is She-Ra. So I feel like this kind of definitely confirms that Chilli was the character in Fairy Tale that Bandit met, because we have a lot more She-Ra references in this. Everything from her pulling out the sword, just like She-Ra does, with all the magical lights coming out everywhere, and also the fact that her horse in the end ends up becoming a winged horse as well, just like She-Ra's. We also have a 1983 Scarface reference from Bandit saying, "Say hello to my little friend."
Say hello to my little friend.
Say hello to my little friend.
The moon scene as well also reminded me a lot of the Mighty Boosh. And of course, the talking tree is like that stereotypical Lord of the Rings, Ents talking tree, go to them for wisdom. And even in the Behind Bluey podcast, they talked about how they wanted to have a real Lord of the Rings kind of feel in this. And Bandit even references that.
Motorbike? I thought this was an old-timey elfie story.
And we do have one Bluey callback into the episode The Claw, where in that episode, Bandit says,
"Magic Claw has no children. His days are free and easy."
And then again, he says it in this episode once he loses his fairy jocks.
Free and easy.
So let's talk now about horses and Chilli's mum. So there was a big focus on how difficult horses are to draw in this, everything from Bandit saying that to also Chilli referencing it as well. And this is also because in previous podcasts, Joe Brum himself has said that he has had a lot of difficulties with drawing horses. We also know that Chilli's mum loved to ride horses. We saw a photo of her riding one. And also in this, Chilli has drawn her horse with the same sort of color scheme as her mum. And of course, that horse is meant to symbolize her mum as well, with that final end scene just being a perfect way of showing that her mum was not able to come on the journey with her as she started her new family.
You're not coming, are you?
But it also represents Chilli understanding that and being able to let go and come to terms with her loss, but also thanking her for everything that she ever did for her.
Thank you.
Now, talking about Grandma Cattle, we do know that she's voiced by Kate Miller-Heidke, who is an Australian singer and songwriter and was also a contestant for Eurovision. And this episode also happened to air not only on Mother's Day, but also on the Eurovision Contest Day. So it was kind of like a nice little tie-in of those two. Some extra little details and Easter eggs, of course, was the tennis ball that we saw in the dining room. This episode, of course, was also 30 seconds longer. It was one of those sort of more longer drawn out ones, but I think it makes sense because it was sort of a more movie type feel for this. And something else I really loved was, of course, the victory dances that they did, but the fact that the music changed and it was cut short every single time. Just like kind of in a game that you would just sort of press skip as soon as you get a victory. Overall, this episode for me was 5 out of 5 long dogs. The lesson about how if you practice, if you have perseverance and you have confidence, what that can lead to. I thought that was just such a beautiful, beautiful way of showing that idea. Not only was showing, of course, the constant comparisons of Chilli's horses versus Bandit's horse, but also just throughout the episode with Bluey seeing what a lack of confidence can do through her father Bandit and his art style, and what persistence and practice and confidence can do through her mother's art style. Bluey can really see what happens if you decide to give up, and she sees that even with Bandit throughout this episode, but then Bandit then ends up getting inspiration from Bluey and her confidence with that end scene with him drawing that colorful car.
We're doomed!
Hang on. What's this?
Nice car, Dad!
So overall for me, I just really loved this episode. I thought it was beautiful. It is definitely, I think so far, my favorite now from season 3C. It is top tier, just amazing, as well as the music is just so incredible too. But cheeky dogs, let me know in that comment section down below how many long dogs you would give this episode out of 5, and what were your favorite Easter eggs from this episode as well.
Your mum sounds nice.
Yeah, she was.
Today I have a pretty dark Bluey theory for you, and we are going to be talking about when Grandma Cattle, aka Chilli's mum, passed away within the Bluey verse.
Thank you.
There are two things that happened to Chilli that could have been the result of trauma from the grief of her mum passing away that has happened in Bluey. So we're going to be talking about the episodes Fairy Tale, Onesies, Baby Race, the show, Dragon, as well as the pictures that appeared at the start of season 3 of Chilli's family. So we're going to start with the episode Dragon because it gives us the most information on where on the timeline we could be starting.
There I am, 7 years old, drawing horses.
So of course, Dragon is the very first time that we meet Grandma Cattle as well. And we find out that Bluey not only doesn't know what she looks like, but she just didn't know anything about her.
Who is that?
That's my mum. Your grandma.
Wow, she's beautiful.
And that's where we learned that like her death affected Chilli so heavily that she just hasn't had any photos of her up for Bluey's whole entire life, which is 6 years, until of course the start of season 3.
I'm like a mongoose.
You're a goose, all right.
We also know that her mum wasn't around when Bluey and Bingo were born because based off kind of like the analogy that they give you at the end with Chilli saying, oh, you're not coming with us, and saying goodbye to the horse, who of course is the spirit of her mum, we can tell then that her mum wasn't there to see her have her 2 kids and departed or passed away before Bingo and Bluey were born.
You're not coming, are you? Thank you.
So we have that timeline there. We also know, of course, that she was alive when Chilli was 7 years old.
But it's pretty good for a 7-year-old.
Really?
The only other time we see her is in the picture of her with Grandpa Mort, as well as younger Chilli and older Brandy. And in these pictures, Chilli looks younger than 7 in this. So I think that her memory of her mum when she was 7 is like the most recent memory we have with her mum.
Yep. Keep practicing. You'll get better. Just don't ever give up, Chilli.
So that then brings us to the episode Fairy Tale, which is the next time that we see Chilli at a young age.
Bandit Sheila. Is this your hat?
And we can assume in this that she's maybe around the age of 10, similar to Bandit, just based off their height. And we do again assume that yes, this is Chilli based on the She-Ra references. She's dressed as She-Ra in Fairy Tale, and then again in Dragon, there are heavy She-Ra references to her in that.
Oh, well, I'm not that good.
But of course, Bandit remembers all this, but Chilli says that she doesn't remember this at all, even though, yeah, they used to holiday there all the time.
But I've got no memory of that happening. We did used to go on holidays to that caravan park.
Case closed.
But maybe there's a reason why she doesn't remember this encounter at all. And that could be because her mum died around this time. Death can cause a lot of grief and a lot of depression, and that of course in turn can cause memory loss as well. So perhaps that's the reason why she just doesn't remember this encounter in the slightest, because she doesn't remember anything around from this time period because that's when her mum passed away. This then of course would match with the theory that she passed away before Bluey and Bingo were born, but it also matches with the idea in Baby Race where Chilli doesn't go to her mum for advice. She goes and sees Nana for advice about Bluey. She goes and sees her friends for advice. We never see her talking to her mum at all about this.
Let's stop mucking around, eh? A bit of olive oil on those knees will do the trick.
But how is olive oil going to help? Oh my goodness!
Mom, what are you doing?
So again, that kind of really proves the point that it happened before they were born. And yeah, maybe the fairy tale timeline when she was around the age of 10 is when her mum passed away.
Your mum sounds nice.
Yeah, she was.
But then what are some of the things that might be against this theory of it happening during that fairy tale time period? The first one is the fact that there were no photos until season 3.
We're meeting Judo at the park. If we don't get a move on, we'll be late.
All right, trampolinium.
Yeah!
Bluey, puzzle?
I'm not done. Why are you going to Mackenzie's house?
Curry swap.
So yes, if Chilli's mum had passed away when she was 10, that means that by the time season 3 rolls around and she's about 40 years old, she's had about 30 years to try and deal with this kind of grief. And so you would assume that by then that she would be comfortable putting photos up around the house of her mother. She has photos of her father up around the house. So if she's willing to put up photos of him, you'd assume that she'd be willing to put up photos of her mum as well.
What was it that Granddad used to say when he was a soldier?
Hurry up and wait.
But like I said, there's 2 possible time points for this. That was the first one, fairy tale. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of that one. Let's move on to the second possible timeline though. And again, we're going to look back at the episode Dragon and how Chilli chose to draw herself in that episode.
Can I join in?
Wow, that horse is beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's all right.
So when we look at her character design, she has no grey hairs, which means that she's drawn herself technically before Bingo was born. And in the episode Baby Race, she also has no grey hairs in that as well. So we've got sort of like that as a reference point to prove that yes, she is slightly younger and it's before she had kids. But the other thing as well is that she draws herself with like a little side tuft of hair. And we have seen her with that side tuft of hair before, and also no grey hairs. And that is in the episode Puppets, where we see the wedding photo of her and Bandit together.
Yeah, and one more thing.
So in that photo, she's got that same little tuft of hair, which again shows that this was before Bluey was born. So around sort of the maybe mid to late 20s or early 30s.
They had a big wedding, and then Chilli had a baby in her belly.
Aww.
So perhaps she's drawn herself as this character with no grey hairs and with that tuft of hair as the age that she said goodbye to her mother. So her drawing, of course, her and the Pegasus, or the horse at the end, departing and parting ways, was the age that she did depart ways with her mother and had to say goodbye to her mother because she passed away. So that means then that she passed away when Chilli was around maybe her mid to late 20s or early 30s.
Thank you.
So then, what happened to Chilli then after she was married but before Bluey was born, when she had this kind of design? The miscarriage, of course. We know from the episode The Show that that whole idea about the balloon popping was an actual miscarriage. It was confirmed by Joe Brum. I did a whole video about it that I'll leave a link for it up here. But that did happen. And what could possibly have caused it? Yeah, a traumatic event in her life.
So then they...
In real life, there have been a bunch of studies that have been done to show that when you have a traumatic life event while you're pregnant, you do have an increased risk of stillbirth. And perhaps this is what happened to Chilli. Maybe while she was pregnant, her mum passed away, and it was such a deep grief and traumatic event for her that it caused her serotonin and her cortisol levels to go haywire, and of course a hormone imbalance alongside many other things might have caused the miscarriage or stillbirth. This then links up with the episode Onesies and her relationship with Brandy as well, and the picture situation too.
Hi, girls.
Hi.
Hey, Brandy. Hi, Chilli. It's good to see you. Yeah, you too.
So of course, if this happened around the time of her like late 20s, early 30s, it happened to Brandy as well. Brandy also lost her mum. We also know that Brandy really wanted to have kids as well, but she couldn't. And perhaps it's for a similar reason, that she was just going through so much grief and depression from her mum passing away that she just wasn't able to have children, or even just like be in the position to have children.
Why can't she just have the things she wants?
Because it's not meant to be.
And perhaps her and Chilli were kind of bonded over their grief for losing their mum, but when Chilli then did have Bluey and then so soon later had Bingo as well, it really caused that division with Brandy. It was just too much for her to not only have lost her mum, but to now see her sister replicating the family that they had grown up in, family with two girls, just like her and Chilli had been two little girls. It was just too much for Brandy, and that's what made her just have to completely cut ties with Chilli.
I hope they fit. I wasn't sure how much they'd grown in,
4 years.
It's just hard seeing you all, you know?
I know.
This would then explain why we see the photos only pop up at the start of season 3 of Chilli and her family. We know that Bluey's big play occurs between season 2 and season 3, and that's when her and Brandy finally reconnect over the phone. So then what a surprise, season 3, Chilli has put those photos back up again because she is starting to heal from her grief and her issues with her sister. And because of that, she feels comfortable now putting those photos back up again.
I tell you what, next time I come over, I'm not bringing any onesies.
So then this linked in with the idea of her reconciling with Brandy being the reason she puts the photos back up. Again, maybe that's her chance of finally feeling like she's comfortable enough to talk about her mother around Bluey as well. And she uses it through one of her favorite mediums, which is obviously drawing, to talk to Bluey about her grandmother, because maybe she just wasn't ready yet. Like, she'd put up the photos, but maybe she just wasn't ready to actually have that conversation with Bluey about her mum passing away, because it was still in a more recent sort of timeline. Like, it had been within the last like 7-ish years or so, we can imagine 7 to 10 possibly. So of course, then seeing your children and knowing that maybe the miscarriage was linked with your mum's passing, that's a lot to deal with, of course. So maybe finally her healing with Brandy was the journey that she was going on of finally healing her grief with her mum, which we saw in Dragon, and her being able to talk about her mum with Bluey as well.
Me and my sister Brandy made this dance up for our mum's birthday when we were kids.
Just don't ever give up, Chilli.
I didn't give up. That's the difference.
Your mum sounds nice.
Yeah, she was.
Chilli! So, cheeky dogs, that's the two theories basically. It either happened just after Fairy Tale or it happened just before Bluey was born. Let me know in that comment section down below when you think it might have happened and which of these two theories you think is maybe more plausible. This is just something that I absolutely love about Bluey, is the fact that it is just such a realistic show. Like, we've seen it time and time again with all the different like very heavy concepts that they put in here, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of people like to theory craft like this, especially on Reddit and Facebook, and of course myself here, and I love trying to delve into that and give you guys maybe a little bit more perspective about it. But like I said, let me know in that comment section down below what you think of these theories, and while you're down there, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe button, and bell for notifications so you know whenever I release any other Bluey videos. But until then, I have picked you cheeky dogs out a few other videos that maybe you would like to watch, and I will see you all in another video. Mwah! Bye!